My sister told everyone I stole our inheritance, until the lawyer read Dad's real letter aloud. The lawyer set down the envelope, looked at my sister, and asked one question that made her stop breathing. Vanessa, would you like to explain why your name is on this account and not Diane's? My name is Diane Whitfield. I'm 33 years old, and in that office, with $850,000 and my father's house sitting between us, my own sister had just called me a thief in front of everyone who mattered. My family had spent years underestimating me. That afternoon, they finally learned what that mistake cost them. Welcome back to Cherry Revenge Tales. If you're watching, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from tonight. And if you believe in calm, quiet justice, the kind that doesn't need to shout to win, hit like and subscribe before we get into it, because this one, I promise you, earns it. 1 week earlier, I was sitting at my mother's dining table, watching my sister hold court like she already owned the room. The venue alone is $60,000, Vanessa said, swirling her wine, not even looking at me, but Marcus's family insisted on the Belmont estate, so what can you do? My mother beamed at her like she'd announced a Nobel Prize. That's the estate with the fountains, isn't it? Diane, you should see it, though I suppose your budget never really stretched that far. I said nothing. I never did, at that table. I'd learned a long time ago that silence irritated them more than any comeback could. Speaking of budgets, Vanessa said, setting down her glass with a little too much precision, we should talk about Dad's estate. Now that he's gone, someone responsible needs to manage things. The house, the accounts. I already spoke to a financial advisor. Dad hasn't even been gone a month, I said quietly, which is exactly why it needs to be handled properly, my mother snapped. Not left to sit there gathering dust because you're too sentimental to deal with paperwork. Vanessa smiled, the kind of smile she used to give me when we were kids, and she'd already broken something of mine and blamed me for it. It's $850,000, Diane. That's not something we can just leave to chance. I'll take lead on it. I have the head for numbers in this family. You've always been more emotional. Emotional? I looked at my sister, married into money, driving a car worth more than my apartment's yearly rent, and I understood, in that moment, exactly what she wanted. Not to protect our father's legacy, to take it. I'll think about it, I said. That wasn't good enough for her. 2 days later, she called, wanting to meet at my apartment. She came in without waiting to be invited, holding a folder stuffed with papers. I had these drawn up, she said, dropping the folder on my kitchen counter. Power of attorney, transfer of the property deed, and joint access to Dad's accounts. All you have to do is sign. I opened the folder and read slowly. Every document gave her full control, not shared control, full control. This isn't what Dad wanted, I said. Dad's dead Diane. What he wanted doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that this family doesn't fall apart because you want to play the victim over a house you barely visited. I visited him every week. You visited him because you had nowhere better to be, she said, and her voice had that edge now, the one that used to make me shrink when we were younger. Let's be honest, you've always needed him more than the rest of us, so don't act wounded now that it's time to be practical. I closed the folder and slid it back toward her. I'm not signing anything without seeing the will. Her face changed, just slightly. A flicker, gone fast, but I caught it. There is no formal will reading scheduled yet, she said, too quickly. The lawyer said it could take weeks. In the meantime, someone needs to manage the estate so the house doesn't just sit there losing value. Mom agrees with me. Then Mom can sign it. Mom isn't the executor listed on the preliminary paperwork. You are. Which is honestly ridiculous, considering you can't even manage your own savings account. That was new information. I filed it away and said nothing. I need an answer by Friday, Vanessa said, gathering her folder, because if you drag your feet, people are going to start asking why. And you know how Mom's friends talk. You know how everyone talks. Do you really want to be the daughter who fought her grieving mother over money right after their father died? Died? She left the threat hanging in the air like perfume, expecting it to work the way it always had. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked her to the door, said goodnight, and locked it behind her. Then I sat down and reactivated the recording app on my smartwatch, the one I'd quietly turned on the second she walked through my door, small red dot glowing at the edge of the screen the whole conversation. I'd learned, over the years, that when my family got desperate, they got careless with their words. I intended to have proof of exactly what they said, in their own voices, when it mattered. The next morning, I called our father's lawyer, a woman named Ruth Callahan who had handled his affairs for over a decade. I asked her directly, was there a will, and was I really listed as executor? There was a long pause on the line. Diane, she said carefully, I think it's time you came in. Alone. I sat in Ruth's office an hour later while she slid a sealed envelope across the desk with my father's handwriting on the front, asterisk for Diane, to be opened only in my presence. Asterisk inside was a letter he'd written 4 months before he died, back when he'd first been diagnosed and knew he was running out of time to say things properly. I won't tell you everything it said, some of it was just for me, but 2 lines stayed with me the whole drive home. He wrote that he knew exactly what Vanessa had been asking him for over the years, loans she never repaid, a temporary transfer of funds during her wedding planning that had somehow never made it back into his account. And he wrote that he trusted me precisely because I never asked him for a single thing. Ruth told me the official will reading would happen in 5 days, in her office, with the whole family present. She also told me something else. Something Vanessa clearly didn't know yet. Our father had changed the account structure 2 months before he died, adding a failsafe that required a live verification appointment before any funds could be released to anyone, an appointment that had, quietly, already been scheduled for that same day, at exactly the same time as the will reading. Vanessa's financial advisor friend had been trying to push through an early transfer request all week. It would have gone through automatically, unless someone showed up in person to verify it. Ruth had been the one to notice the request and freeze it. I said nothing to my mother or my sister about any of this. I simply told them I'd sign nothing until the official reading, and let them assume I was being stubborn out of grief. The 5 days that followed were loud. Vanessa called twice a day, alternating between guilt and threats. My mother sent a message calling me cold and calculating, ironic words coming from the woman coaching her daughter through a estate takeover. At one family dinner that week, Vanessa actually stood up from the table and said, in front of my aunt and uncle, that I was hoarding Dad's money out of jealousy, because Marcus's family was wealthier than anyone I'd ever dated. My aunt looked uncomfortable. I simply thanked everyone for the meal and left early. I never raised my voice once. I didn't need to. I already knew what Friday would bring. The day of the reading, we all sat in Ruth Callahan's office, my mother, Vanessa, Marcus, and me. A clock on the wall read 3:15. Ruth mentioned, almost in passing, that the account verification window closed automatically at 5 o'clock sharp, and that whatever wasn't confirmed by then would remain frozen for 90 days pending a formal court review. Vanessa's eyes flicked to the clock. I watched her legs start bouncing under the table. Ruth opened the folder and read through the standard provisions first: small gifts to cousins, a donation to Dad's old fishing club, nothing dramatic. Then she reached the section concerning the house and the accounts. Under the terms outlined here, Ruth said, the primary residence and the remaining balance of $850,000 are to be held in trust, with Diane Whitfield named as sole executor and primary beneficiary. The room went silent for exactly 1 second before Vanessa exploded. That's not possible. That has to be an old draft. Dad would never. There's an accompanying letter, Ruth said, calm as still water, addressed to the family, that your father asked me to read aloud today, in this room, in front of everyone. She unfolded the second letter, the one I hadn't seen, the one he'd written specifically for this moment. To my family, Ruth read. I know that by the time this is read, some of you will already be angry with the decisions I've made. I want to explain them plainly, so there's no confusion after I'm gone. Vanessa, I know about the $42,000 you borrowed for your wedding that was never repaid, despite 3 separate requests. I know about the account inquiries you made behind my back last spring. I forgive you for asking. I do not forgive the lying. Diane never once asked me for money in her life, not when she was struggling, not when it would have been easy to. She showed up because she wanted to, not because she wanted something. That is why the house and the funds go to her, in full, to manage as she sees fit. I trust her judgment more than I have ever trusted anyone's, including my own. Vanessa's face had gone white. Marcus was staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. This is insane, Vanessa said, voice cracking. She probably paid someone to write this. She's been planning this. Vanessa, Ruth said, unemotional, procedural, not even looking up from the papers. Would you like to explain why your name is on the verification request that's been sitting on this account since Tuesday, attempting to move $200,000 before today's reading? Because that request is logged, timestamped, and tied to your advisor's credentials. The room went completely still. My mother turned to look at Vanessa, and for the first time in my life, I watched my mother's certainty crack. You said you were just checking the balance, my mother said slowly. You told me you were just checking. I was going to fix it before anyone noticed, Vanessa said, and the second the words left her mouth, she seemed to realize what she'd admitted, in front of a lawyer, in front of a recording device that never technically stopped running, in front of everyone. You were going to fix stealing $200,000, Marcus said, standing up from his chair, from your dying father's account, while planning our wedding. It wasn't stealing, it was going to be *Rs* eventually anyway. That's not how any of this works, Marcus said, and he walked out of the office without looking back. Vanessa called after him twice. He didn't stop. My mother sat frozen, staring at her hands, finally understanding that the daughter she'd spent a month calling cold and calculating had done nothing but stay quiet and let the truth arrive on its own schedule. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording from that night in my apartment, and set it on the table without a word. Ruth glanced at it, then at Vanessa, and said nothing else. She didn't need to. I looked at my sister, who had spent a week telling everyone I couldn't be trusted with money, telling our mother I was cold, telling our relatives I was jealous and small. You said I needed Dad more than the rest of you, I said quietly. Maybe, but it turns out he needed someone he could actually trust, and that wasn't you. I stood, thanked Ruth, and walked out of that office into the 5 o'clock light, leaving my sister to explain herself to a room that no longer believed a word she said. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one who never asked for anything and got treated like she'd earned nothing because of it, I want you to hear this. Your silence was never weakness, it was restraint. People who are busy proving their worth out loud rarely have the patience to notice who's actually earning it in the background. Boundaries don't need volume. Self-worth doesn't need an audience. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay steady, keep your receipts, and let the truth introduce itself on its own timeline. The people who underestimate you today are usually the ones standing in the room when you're finally proven right. Thank you so much for watching this story here on Cherry Revenge Tales. If it meant something to you, please like and subscribe so you never miss the next one, and if you haven't already, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from tonight.